Welcome to the Why on Earth Community Podcast. I'm your host, Aaron William Perry, and today we're visiting with author Lisa Bronner, the author of Soap and Soul. Lisa, it is so great to visit with you.
Thanks, Aaron. I'm glad to be here.
We have a lot to talk about in the theme of cleanliness, being next to godliness or goddessliness, however we like to think about this. And I'm so thrilled we have the opportunity to dive in a bit to this beautiful resource that you've created for us in your book.
Thanks so much. I had a lot of fun writing it and it was a long time in coming, and I had a big buildup.
Yeah, it's clear that it wasn't your first time around the block with the subject matter. You've got deep expertise here, and it's a joy we can share this resource with folks. Lisa Bronner is the author of Soap and Soul, a practical guide to minding your home, your body, and your spirit with Dr. Bronner's magic soaps. She is a prolific writer, consumer advocate, and speaker on health and green lifestyle issues. Her blog, Going Green with Lisa Bronner, addresses diverse topics related to green living, from personal care and GIY, green it yourself home cleaning tips, to essays on food and family, living lightly, mindfulness, and daily life encouragement. She is the granddaughter of Dr. Emanuel Bronner, the founder of Dr. Bronner's Magic Soaps, which is the top-selling natural brand of soaps in North America. Lisa graduated from Duke University with a bachelor's in English and taught English and journalism in Raleigh, North Carolina, before moving to California, where she resides in rural San Diego County. And, Lisa, this book, I really am, as I mentioned to you recently, recommending this to so many folks for tips and tricks we can use in our own homes, as well as our offices, to get much cleaner results, literally and figuratively, and really importantly, detoxify our environs and our bodies. And so this book is chock full of practical how-to recommendations, but it's also a very intimate and authentic revealing of your own home and your own journey around, some of the issues we all experience in our homes. Your parenting, your connection with spaces and places through the hours of the day and into the wee hours of the night. It's really so beautifully written and drew me right in. And I'm curious, what was the process like for you deciding how much to share and how much to kind of open your home up, so to speak, to the reader?
Well, there were a few things that led me to the point of sharing as much as I did about my personal life. Part of it was that I wanted to write a book that I would be interested in reading. And I wouldn't be interested in reading a book that was just a bunch of recipes for home and body care. First of all, I think that book's already been written, even though my recipes would be slightly different and definitely well tested and authoritative from the manufacturers. I still wanted it to be something more, something you would want to sit down with in your comfy chair and read. And the way to do that is through stories. I think storytelling is a very powerful method of persuasion. And I guess persuading is fundamentally what I wanted to do. I wanted to persuade people that it's worth paying attention to the products and ingredients that you put on your body and bring into your house. I wanted to persuade people that it's possible to tackle all this. It's not, I know people are busy or they're budget constrained or they don't know where to start, and they feel like they don't know enough. And so I wanted to persuade people that anyone can go on the same road towards cleaning up our products, simplifying our routines. And I also, there's definitely a part that wanted to just be honest. First of all, it's so much simpler to be honest because there's less to remember if I'm not making it up. What story did I tell them about this situation? I just told you the stories in my life. I didn't do a ton of research into how to write, but I did do a good bit. And as you mentioned, I am a teacher by training. read a lot, and I really enjoy books about writing. And every single author who gives advice about writing says you've got to write from where you are. You've got to write from what you know. And so that's what I had. And where am I? Well, I'm in my house. I've always worked from home. I'm in the middle of a parenting journey. My kids are a little bit older than when I wrote the book, but they're still have two of them at home. Um, I don't have it all done. I'm not done. My house is, still in process. I'm still learning things. That's been a frustrating part of having written a book, is I've learned things since then. Like, oh man, wish that could have gone in the book. But and so all of that added up to wanting to share my story, to write a book that was different than the zillions of green cleaning books that are already making up that section of the bookstore. And the one thing I have that no one else has are my stories. And so I sat down to write them. I didn't write them in order. I kind of had to go with where the inspiration was. So probably the family room chapter was which is next. The last chapter was like the first thing I wrote. And so that didn't matter. The book's not particularly sequential. So that was really special. And then the other thing I wanted to do in our family's company, in Dr. Bronners, it was founded in 1948 by my grandfather, Emanuel Bronner, and he ran it he had people that worked with him, especially because he went blind, and he very much needed help, but he ran it. He was the passion, he was the energy, he was the driving force behind it, until he was brought down by Parkinson's in the 90s, early 90s. And that's when my dad stepped in. And my dad officially took over in 1993. And then my grandfather didn't die. He passed away in 1997. But then my dad passed away in 1998 from lung cancer. And so my dad's tenure at Dr. Bronner's was rather short, but so important. And just because he wasn't in the timeline very long, he doesn't always get the time in our storytelling. And so it was very important for me to include him in the stories. It's very difficult to take a family business from its first generation into its second. That might be the most difficult transition, to take what was one person's passion when that person is gone, and is there enough without that individual? And so my dad, with my mom at his side, and my uncle Ralph, they made that happen. But my dad really was the main person there. So I really wanted to tell my dad's story, which is in the chapter called The Kitchen. My dad was a chemist, which might also mean he was a chef. I don't know if all chemists are chefs, but it was very much one grew out of the other. And so I wanted to tell my dad's story and my parents' story together. And so that was another thing that was important about the storytelling part of the book.
Yeah, the storytelling is so compelling, and the way you're weaving together your own personal experiences with the sort of broader context of the Bronner family. And there's a page in the book that actually has your family tree going back several generations to the Heilbronner, even earlier sort of proto-origins, right? And yeah, it's such a beautiful family affair, literally, and in the ways in which Dr. Bronners as an organization now is really leading globally in terms of regeneration, in terms of social responsibility, in terms of big innovations around employee and organizational structures and strategies. And indeed, with the Why on Earth Community podcast, we've had a handful of your colleagues and family members on previous episodes, your brothers, Garo Lezone, and of course, Ryan Zinn, the regenerative projects manager, whom you thank at the end of your book. And, wanted to call out specifically Garo's book. He's not a family member, his book, Honor Thy Label, because in it, he kind of takes this deep dive into the history of your family, both in Germany and Europe and here in the United States. And it sets, there's a context here over the last 150 years of world history that is very immediate, very intimate. And in a way, you're not only sharing your very personal experience as a mother in your own home, you're also sharing your family's experience through some very difficult moments and periods in our world's history. And I'm just wondering, what is that like for you, as both an author now and a storyteller and a person with strong messaging for the world? And how was that, growing up for you to have this kind of public thing going on with Dr. Bronners, which is not your typical soap company, right? Can you share with us what that kind of arc has been like for you?
Yes, certainly. And you've made reference to several things that that I was born into. We are fifth generation soap makers. My grandfather was actually the third generation of his family to make soap. The first, and honestly, I'm going to say the first that we know of, was his grandfather, Emanuel Heilbronner, in 1858, in what is now southern Germany, started making soap. And then his son, three of his sons went to Heilbronn and had a very successful soap making operation that because they were Jewish, it did not survive the war. My grandfather had immigrated already to the United States, and for about 20 years was a consultant and worked for other organizations and didn't really have the intention of starting a soap company. He had a message that he wanted to get out. He was just devastated by seeing what was happening in the world. His parents both perished in concentration camps. The family legacy, the properties were all confiscated and sold to Aryan hands, as the letter said, that was distributed at the time. My grandfather's wife, my grandmother, she died in a mental institution in the 40s, which is a terrible, terrible place to be. And amidst all this tragedy, he was not embittered. He was not filled with hatred. Instead, he was impassioned to share with the world, look, we need to put aside all of our differences and all of these barriers that we have between ourselves and realize how much more we have in common. And so he started the company not as a business, but as a way to get out a message. He knew how to make soap. He noticed that people were much more interested in soap and a good soap than in this message of world peace, but he put the message on the bottle and the soap became the messenger. All throughout his life, he was completely caught up with that label, refining it, perfecting it, making sure it communicated as effectively. He was constantly changing it. And so he started this not as a business, but as a missional organization. In fact, he got in trouble with the IRS several times because he didn't see himself as a manufacturer or a seller of products. He saw himself as a more of a religious institution. Not that he was founding a religion; it was more of a philosophy. If you read the label, which is something I recommend doing, but it definitely stretches your mind. He pulls from all these different faiths and philosophies and scientific ways of thinking, and shows how there are similarities across these different faith traditions. And so from the beginning, we've been a missional organization. My grandfather was so impassioned with it that he had no patience for anything else. So as far as my experience with it, my grandfather, Dr. Bronner, was my only living grandparent. And so my whole grandparent experience was Dr. Bronner. Now, granted, I read, and so I would read in books about grandmother, grandparent, archetypes and this, comforting, nurturing, spoiling the grandchildren. That wasn't really my experience. When we got together with my grandfather, he really just wanted to talk and make sure we understood the moral ABC, make sure we understood that we are all one or none, exceptions eternally, absolute none. He so that was my experience with it. Um, I didn't really have a toehold into that as a child. It was odd. It was, I didn't have much to say back to him. I didn't disagree with him, but I just didn't have a conversation with him. Um, I didn't really even realize what impact he was having. I mean, I knew the soap, of course, and I knew it was sold in, crunchy camping stores and mom and pop independent health stores, but my as a child, I remember my Uncle Ralph. So that's my Dr. Bronner's middle child, my dad's older brother. He was a storyteller, also very gregarious, and he loved to go visit health stores. In fact, he was our sales force by himself. He was a teacher, but during his school breaks, he would go visit health stores in different cities and tell them the story. And if it was where I was, he would grab me and pull me in, and he would say to the, person standing behind the counter, which, might be the owner, but might just be some hired, teenager that they had on staff at the moment, and say, do you know who this is? And it would be pointing to me, this is Dr. Bronner's granddaughter. I'd be like, Uncle Ralph, it's so embarrassing. They don't know who that is. And they would be like, oh, wow. Then they would pull out a bottle of the soap. Um, so I didn't really grasp it until I was old enough, and then unfortunately he was already in quite a decline from Parkinson's, where communicating was very difficult for him. But the idea of seeing beyond people's exteriors and seeing beyond the faith that they adhere to realize our shared humanity and our shared human experience, that all came to me a lot later. And then fitting his story against world events, that was an education for me. Because there were ways in which my grandfather would tell his stories that do make sense, but they are not the ways they're told in the storybooks. So, like my grandfather, he actually was also incarcerated in a mental institution in the 40s in Chicago, outside Chicago, the Elgin State Asylum. And after a couple of years there of hard labor, mixing cement, laying brick, also undergoing electroshock therapy, which probably is what contributed to his later blindness, he escaped from that. But growing up, he would tell me about his time in the concentration camps. And then when I learned he emigrated to the United States in 1929, I was very confused. Was he lying? Were there concentration camps in the United States? Like I was very confused. But then I realized, what? His experience in Elgin, where people did die and people were horribly mistreated, and he was strapped down and underwent electroshock therapy. I mean, I can see why he called that a concentration camp. But it took me like a bit of learning my history to piece that all together. But as I've learned my European history and especially my German history, it's been very interesting to see my family's backdrop against that. Being in Germany during the unification of Germany in the late 1800s, during various different approaches to the Jewish population, which my family was, there were various phases of embracing the Jewish population and then denigrating it. It went back and forth. So in the early 1800s, my family changed our name from Einstein to Heilbronner, based on the town of Heilbronn. So, we've had, okay, you can look up the decree that made that happen, and that's where our family's name comes from. And then, you see my family's progression. Laupheim, where they started making soap in 1858, was pretty embracing of its Jewish population, and things went well for my family there. In Heilbronn, where the three of the second generation went, also fairly well integrated. They were extremely successful. They had three buildings to their factory. They distributed soaps across Germany. They were economically very successful. There was, again, a law that opened up trade to the Jewish people, which is an example of when my family, had a good thing going, and they were able to engage in the manufacturing. But then, of course, all that was dialed back in the 1930s. And to see these historical moments, and then that they actually impacted my family, it's really, brought it all home. And then through the 1930s, like the Kristallnacht and the 1938 law that excluded Jews from economic life in Germany, and then the law in 1939 that prohibited them from owning property. That pulled things out of my family's hands. And we've been able to go back to Germany and see all of this. The soap factory in Heilbronn, it still stands. It has been sold a couple times, so it's not the family that now owns it, a wonderful family, been very welcoming to us and our exploration of their property. One of our actually several of our soap vats were still bolted into their floor, and they sent us one. It took that thing a while to clear customs. But we have it now in Vista. So it's been really neat to be able to learn history in this very personal way.
Absolutely, absolutely tremendous. Did you say Einstein before Heilbronner?
Yes, yeah. I mean, it's a fairly common Jewish last name.
Wow. So in addition to all of this remarkable part of your family story, you're potentially related to Albert Einstein also, huh?
I will say that my grandfather embraced that tenuous connection. I mean, I'm sure there is a connection. We don't know the history that far back, but my grandfather might have stretched it a little bit by referring to Albert Einstein as his uncle. But there's probably some sort of distant cousin relation. That's been a really neat thing, actually, because my family is somewhat in the public eye. We've had a lot of distant family members reach out to us. I mean, needless to say, my family was scattered by the war. I mean, if you survived Germany, it was only because you left. And so the first generation that made soap, there were 11 children, I believe, born to that family. And so 3 of them were the set that went over to Heilbronn, and that's my line is one of those. But there were a lot of soap makers. They all went into soap. And so, but they all left. And so bit by bit, we've heard from almost all of those 11 different branches down. And there's just in a crazy synchronicity, there's one of my cousins, he's a cousin, I think we would say 5th cousin. The shared ancestor is Emanuel Bronner, 5 generations back. But his family ended up in New England, and he is a regenerative chestnut farmer. And so he's in the similar space that my brother David and our company has championed so much towards regenerative organic agriculture, and here on his own track he has ended up in the same realm. So that's been really cool. And there's so much to track and so much to keep track of. I'm sure there's some sort of software I could have, but right now everything's kind of in files on my computer, the different emails I've gotten from family members.
Yeah. How wonderful. Well, yeah, and in some of the other episodes we've had with your brothers and others from Dr. Bronners, we've talked extensively about the amazing work the company is doing in the regenerative agriculture arena. And, I love the labels on the soap. I remember about 30 years ago when I was first attending a permaculture workshop on a community farm in New Mexico, going to the restroom, finding this bottle with all of this stuff written on it, and falling in love instantly, and of course now you guys are not only in the crunchy outdoor stores and the independent co-ops, but you're in a lot of the big mainstream retailers, and a whole lot of us now I think are familiar with and use your products, and the breadth and depth of information on the labels is fabulous and leaves such an impression. And in that spirit, your book also shares so much with us about things we can do in our own home, from the moment we wake up in the morning until the moment we go to bed at night and possibly even wake up in the middle of the night. I love that section when you're talking about that. And in here, you're sharing these very important things for us to be aware of and take action around, like the toxicity found in so many personal care products, home cleaning products, etc. And you break it up and you organize it in such a way that it's very easy to follow, to digest, to approach. I love how you include vignettes throughout the book, like lab coat moments and origin stories and ingredient spotlights and Ask Lisa, kind of pulling from your blog and Green It Yourself work. So it's really something I'm recommending to people to get a hold of and read, because there's, for all of us, probably even more we can do in our own lives and in our workplaces to clean and green even further. And one of the things I really appreciate in all of this is the tenor of friendship and kindness and gentleness and slowing down that you share. So it's not, my experience as reading your book, it's not like getting kind of beat over the head with, you got to do this and this and this and then this and this. And if you're not doing this, my gosh, you got to X, Y, and Z. And instead, it's very much this invitation into all these things we can learn about and do to simplify our lives and detoxify our lives and, frankly, make our day-to-day quality of lives much better. Thank you for sharing that with the world. And I want to ask, how do you temper the passion and knowing, that there really is so much in our world that is really so dangerous for us and for our planet? How do you approach all of that in such a calm, gentle, measured way?
Well, I feel like I am a teacher, and when you're a teacher, you have to take people from where they are. You can't take them from where you wish they were or where you feel like they should be, because there's no point to that. It's not realistic. They can't suddenly jump 10 steps ahead. You have to take them from where they are. And the thing is, you want to keep them going. So guilt is not a long-term motivator. It might motivate us for a little bit, but there's not going to be any joy in it. There's not going to be any long-term commitment there. We might do a little bit to assuage how we feel, but what we want instead is to make it, something that benefits not just in a feel-good way, but in an actual way. So make it fun, make it approachable, make it doable. And as you said, hitting people over the head with why aren't you doing this already? Why, you're the problem. You're the one that's, causing climate change. That's not going to be something that anybody's going to want to stick around and listen to. People don't tend to stick around and listen to being beat over the head if they have a choice. And you do have a choice, whether you pick up my book and read it all the way through. And so I really wanted to make it approachable and doable, just because that's the only way to go. I wanted to be effective. And honestly, it goes back to that point I made earlier, is I had to be honest, because I came to this later than you would think. You would think that with my family legacy, I would have known all this from the womb. Not the case. I had to go and learn it myself in my own way, and trial and error, and having my own crises moments. And that's my story. So I can't hardly expect anybody else's story to be much different. We all are moving forward, and if I can help people take the next step forward to simplicity, to safety even, but to living a better, fuller, more vibrant life, that's what I want to do. I very much wanted it to feel like we were sitting down together and having a cup of coffee and talking about something, rather than getting hit over the head or a chemistry lecture. That being said, I love chemistry. I'm an English teacher by training, but I'm a chemist by by birth. My dad was a chemist. Our garage was a laboratory. He had a laboratory. He had an actual one that picture a laboratory in your mind. That's what it looked like all sorts of bottles on the walls and all sorts of devices. Things could bubble and spin. And, so I grew up with that. And, in my childhood and then a teacher by training. And so I want people to understand why this isn't just a do this because I say so. There are chemistry reasons behind why you should not mix cleaners, even green cleaners, why you should not mix vinegar and soap, why you should not mix Epsom salts and soap. Oh my goodness. I so often walk into a health store and they've got the Castile soap sitting right next to the Epsom salts, like a suggestion to go mix them. Don't mix them. That's a recipe for soap scum. You're like making soap scum. And so I also think that there are a lot of people that, they need to know why, or else it's not motivating. And so I tried to reach as many different reader types as I could. In fact, I had a list I wrote before I started writing. Somebody asked me, who are you writing this to? And so I had a list of readers, like there were about 7 or 8 of people who might read my book, the mom, the young mom, up to her eyeballs in dirty diapers and no sleep. What can I offer that person? The busy professional who wants to do better but doesn't have time. The curious, they want to know the why. They want to dive deep into the science. The budget conscious that wants to go green or wants to be more environmentally friendly, but they don't have a lot of spare money to push towards it. And so you mentioned the lab coat moments. Those are little experiments you can do at home to learn the concepts that I talk about. So you can see I'm not making it up. The origin stories, people like to see deeper into the products that they're using. What went into this? Where did things come from? And so I wanted to share those too. So I had all these different people in mind, and how can I help them? How can I reach them? How can I engage them? So all of that kind of came together in the different parts. I picture somebody like opening the book and the Ask Lisas, which are kind of like a Dear Abby. Those are real questions I've gotten, and all those pages are gray. So like I'm the person who will flip through a book and look for the pictures or whatever. So you could flip and look for the gray pages and you get all the Ask Lisas, or the lab coat moments all have a little symbol and you could flip through and find them all.
Yeah, I so enjoy and appreciate all of those different elements in the book, and I really loved the diagrams, how soap works, how soap is made, and I had a working knowledge of this, but seeing the visuals for me just really kind of locked in what was going on with the various ionic charges, and boy, the advice and recommendations is fabulous, and yeah, I really appreciate the convergence of what makes sense for us in terms of our own health and well-being, in terms of planetary stewardship, and in terms of budgetary management, right? Being thrifty. And there's an art of simplicity running through the book, the recommendations, and through the soap products from Dr. Bronners itself, right? It's sort of the opposite of complexifying and mystifying and bewildering people. And related to that, the advice you provide us around understanding labels across all products and understanding the various, here in the United States, different federal agencies that govern various aspects of these products we're interacting with every day. The book is a real resource to help kind of untangle what is otherwise a pretty difficult set of variables to really kind of have a working understanding of.
Well, and that's my sharing from my own journey, because when you go to buy something, let me pick a hard one, sunscreen. And you go to buy sunscreen, you've got the whole wall of sunscreen in the aisles. It's like half an aisle. And even within one brand, you've got so many different options. What messages that you're reading on a label mean something and what don't? And honestly, as a consumer, I felt like I was being played with. I was being manipulated. You know, what of what they say means something that is like set. What are they trying to dupe me with by like they know I will think it means a certain thing, but it doesn't.
Yeah.
And which of them have some sort of oversight behind it? Most of what's on a label has no oversight. I mean, we do have, you know, truth in marketing laws, but they're pretty easy to navigate around. There are very, very few words on labels that have a meaning that you could make a stand on. Most of the words on labels are unregulated. Not that they're a lie, but they're not regulated. So what the manufacturer intends by them might not be what the consumer uh, receives. And so what I share in the book about in the section how to read a label is, you know, so that a consumer can know what they're reading and make an educated decision. You know, one of my roles at Dr. Bronners is consumer education. Because there's just so much that's on the consumer to learn. We want to think that there's a law that's watching over things, but there's not. Like, especially when it comes to personal care. Personal care sort of falls between the cracks. It's under the FDA for the most part, what's in personal care. But the FDA is mostly focused on food and drugs. And even though personal care is in there, it's neither food nor drugs. And so it just hasn't been regulated. It hasn't, and there's no oversight. There's no like safety commission that reviews formulations or ingredients. All of that is on the manufacturer. You know, there's like some vague language in a 1938 law. The 1938 law, which is what created the FDA, and it had a small section for personal care, and it says basically manufacturers need to make sure that the products they sell are safe. Well, safe is a very subjective word. Is it safe, you know, for the short term, safe for the long term, safe for all people, safe for all ages? You know, you've got vulnerable populations, people with allergies, you know, so it's very vague. And there's no framework for analyzing all of this. It's changing a little bit. There's been a somewhat finally long and time in coming update to that 1938 law in 2022, something called MOCRA, that modernized that a little bit. But most of it is on the consumer to know what they're using, what impact it will have on their body. And what's more complicated is ingredients. There are some ingredients that are more scrutinized, but they're always scrutinized in isolation. We never put products on our body in isolation. Very, very rarely. Maybe you'll put pure coconut oil, but for the most part, we put products on our bodies in combination within one product, and then combination across products. Like, think about what you might have put on this morning. You might have washed. Now that got rinsed off, but you might have put on some lotion. You might have then put on some sunscreen. You might have put on a cologne or a perfume. You might have put on some makeup. All of these things are actually combined on your skin in something called the cocktail effect. Gosh, that sounds lovely, doesn't it? But it's not the cocktail effect. What combination is happening there? And so it really is on the consumer to analyze all their products across the range that they're using and what combinations are happening on their skin. That's daunting. I mean, that's a lot, which is one of the reasons why I tell people to simplify, because who has time for that? On average in America, we put on 12 products a day, but I can tell you for a lot of people, it's a lot higher. And products have about 12 to 13 ingredients each. That's a lot of ingredients. So that's one of the reasons why I tell people to simplify, because you just don't have time to track all those ingredients and what are they doing in combination with each other. Certain ingredients are fine by themselves, but not when combined. So it's just a lot to do. But unfortunately, it is buyer beware, both for personal care, less so for house cleaning, just because the EPA, if something is a pesticide, if something is antibacterial or claims to kill, it actually is overseen by the Environmental Protection Agency. Soap is not, because soap does not work by killing. Soap works by removing. So it's not under the EPA. All of this is in the book. And so it's odd that we actually have a little bit more oversight to our house cleaning products than we do to our personal care products and the things that are actually in contact with our bodies. But yeah, I could have written the whole book just on how to read a label and product safety and what to know when you go to buy something at the store. There's a lot to say there.
Yeah, I so appreciate this. And clearly, there's quite a lot out there that we would probably do well to avoid. And then there are some wonderful natural products and ingredients that have extraordinary healthful and nourishing attributes and properties. And two in particular that you call out in the book, I wanted to ask you about to give us a quick snapshot. Hemp seed oil and regenerative organic certified virgin coconut oil. Two great products. Can you tell us a little about each of those?
Sure. So coconut oil was in my grandfather's formulation from the 1940s. I actually don't know the specific formulation before then, but my grandfather used it from the beginning in combination with olive oil to make the Castile soap. Um, and so we've used it for a long time. Hemp has a different story. I'll get to that one in a minute. So we've used coconut for a long time in our soaps. Coconut oil is a tropical oil. Think about a coconut tree. It grows, in the tropics. So most of the United States is not in the tropics. So it almost always comes from overseas. In 1999, David, my brother, first took the company organic and took our major materials organic. And that was difficult enough at the time because there were no organic standards for personal care companies, for personal care products. There was only organic standards for food. And so David used the food standards, used food grade coconut oil and olive and other ingredients to make our soaps and certified them with Oregon Tilth as a certifier. The USDA didn't like that he did that. They said, you can't do it. Like, you can't use a food standard for soap. And David's point was like, why do you care what I do with the ingredients? They are USDA certified organic ingredients. My brother Mike would say, do you care if I make soap or soup? It's going into soap. And so that was the first step, was going organic. And that was great. And eventually David was very active on the forefront of creating organic standards for personal care. And we now have them, the National Organic Program and other things. But really before that battle was done, he knew it wasn't going to be enough. The issue is that organic standards are great for the environmental input. No, synthetics, no irradiation, no sewage sludge, no genetic modification. But they're absolutely silent on the topic of labor and animal welfare. And so you can have a product that legitimately is organic, but the people who created it, people who grew it or processed it, were treated poorly. They were paid unfairly. They had unfair hiring practices. They were unsafe. And so before he was even done with the organic journey, he already knew we needed to go further. And so shortly after that, Dr. Bronner's committed to going fair trade with our major ingredients. And so that was, again, the coconut oil, olive oil, palm oil as well. And our mint oil, we're the largest user of organic and fair trade mint oil in the world now. The problem with this commitment is that these sources didn't exist. There were no fair trade and organic coconut producers that could supply us at the volumes we needed. And so our solution to that is we ended up founding our own mill in Sri Lanka called Serendipol. It's a sister company. It's been operating since 2008. The opportunity actually came out of the tsunami of 2004. Garrow, whom you mentioned earlier, who wrote the book Honor Thy Label, he was pivotal, and he tells the story of how Serendipol was founded in 2000 in the aftermath of the tsunami, because he found that there was this untapped resource of coconut farms that didn't have a market. And so we created our own supply chain there. So that was excellent. We did the same thing with palm oil. We have a beautiful fair trade palm oil operation in Ghana called Serenda Palm. We helped with a mint oil production. We don't own this one in northern India called Pavitra Mint. And so that was good. But again, fair trade is silent on the topic of animal welfare. So thinking about, why is each certification only doing its small part? Why, the bottle's getting a little crowded. Well, there's only so much space for all these different little
Yeah.
logos.
Yeah.
And so David partnered with a group from Rodale, the Rodale Institute, longtime
Yeah.
champions of organic standards, and Patagonia, a like-minded company, much larger than us. And they founded the Regenerative Organic Alliance with the intention of creating a new certification, Regenerative Organic Certified, that would encompass both organic standards, fair trade standards, and animal welfare standards. It is a complex certification. You have to have a lot in place. And so it piloted in 2020, and three of our operations were a part of that initial pilot audit. The Serendipol, the coconut oil in Sri Lanka, Serendipalm, the palm oil in Ghana, and Pavitra mint, the mint oil in Uttar Pradesh, India. All three of them achieved silver certification, which was the highest given out at the time. There's bronze, silver, and gold in their initial year. And so that is why our coconut oil, which we use not only in our soaps, we use it in almost every product, but we also sell as a standalone ingredient our food grade coconut oil. It is regenerative organic certified. And so that's where that comes from. Later this year, well, actually already our chocolate, which is a story unto itself, is the first regenerative organic certified chocolate that will be on the market. Our chocolate's been on the market, but we've now achieved that certification for it as well. So that's just a story of like how Dr. Bronners has always been on a journey of how can we do things better. And from each mountaintop, we see the next one. And the work is never done, but we've got lots of energy and lots of people willing to be creative and work hard and put that all together. So hemp has its own story. Hemp is a fantastic oil. It's just a superhero of an oil. It is a plant, of course, but it's got the oil that comes from the hemp seed is got the closest fatty acid profile to what our skin naturally produces, which means when our skin isn't producing its oil, when our skin is depleted, either because of our health or our environment or whatever, that hemp seed oil is a great replenishment to it. Our skin recognizes it, can make use of it. It's not some strange molecule that it can't make put to work. And so David actually, and I refer to David. David was my oldest brother. When my dad was declining in 97 to 98 from lung cancer, David had come on board already. And so when my dad passed, David stepped into the presidency. He was 24 at the time. No, he just turned 25 at the time. And then eventually my brother Mike came on board, and then my husband Michael. But a lot of this happened while it was just David, my mom as CFO, my uncle Ralph still sort of advising from Wisconsin. So David added hemp seed oil to the formulation. It's one of the very few changes we've made in the soap since my grandfather's day. And the reason was he learned about it. It became available at volumes that we needed. And it has this marvelous ability to heal our skin. On its own as a pure oil, it's not shelf stable. So you can eat it, certainly, but you have to keep it in the fridge. You can even apply it straight to your skin, but again, you have to keep it in the fridge. So a little bit odd to stop by the fridge on the way to the bathroom, but you can. But it's a great addition to the soap. It's part of the super fatting of the bar soap to make it extra nourishing to our skin. At the time when David chose to add it, and he knew this, hemp seed oil was actually classified as a class 1 narcotic because of its relation to, well, it comes from the cannabis sativa plant as well. It has no THC content, or it's certified not to, so all of it's tested. But there was definitely some rigmarole with the DEA over that. David was arrested twice over that process of of saying, yes, we can use this. It does not make our soap psychoactive. You could drink the hemp oil. It's not gonna cause a high of any sort. So that's got its own story. Hemp seed oil became legal to use shortly after that, and now, as of 2019, it's legal to grow hemp in the United States. We had been sourcing it from Canada prior to then, so that's got its own story that I'm pretty sure Garo tells in Honor Thy Label also. Um, but it's just a marvelous oil. It's one of the few, if you look at the vitamin and nutrient profile of hemp seed oil, it looks like it's, you know, trying to impress you. It's really got a lot in it.
Yeah, it's such an extraordinary plant and healer in so many ways. Let me remind our audience, this is the Why on Earth Community Podcast. I'm your host, Aaron William Perry. Today, we're visiting with Lisa Bronner, the author of Soap and Soul, and a member of the illustrious Bronner family. I gotta mention that we've a number of other podcast episodes. If you're interested in even deeper dives on some of these topics, I'd recommend the interview with Scott Black from the Xerces Society, some of the impacts of toxic chemicals on insects and invertebrates in particular. Of course, we've mentioned both David and Michael Bronner. Lisa's brothers have been on separate episodes, Michael's being the chocolate episode. I learned a lot about chocolate making in that one. And Ryan Zinn and Garo Lezone, also from Dr. Bronners, have each been on separate episodes as well. And then wanted to shout out to Jackie Bowen, the executive director of Clean Label Project. She and her organization are also doing a lot of work around our education as consumers and advancing how we're stewarding ourselves and our planet, our communities, vis-a-vis the chemical choices we're making. And of course, have to give a shout out to Elizabeth Whitlow, the executive director of the Regenerative Organic Alliance. We've had episodes with Yichao Rui and Jeff Moyer from the Rodale Institute. At the time, Brigitte Mars, a sweet piece on hemp and cannabis. Katie Garces on Beauty Counter, again, talking about the importance of understanding these various chemical choices in our self-care and beauty product decisions. And got to give a big shout out to some of our key sponsors who make our Why on Earth Community Podcast possible, as well as the rest of our regeneration renaissance work across culture, ecology, and economy. This includes Chelsea Green Publishing, Waylay Waters, aromatherapy, hemp-infused aromatherapy soaking salts, Profitable Purpose Consulting, Earth Coast Productions, Patagonia, and of course, Dr. Bronners. And we've had so many wonderful gatherings in the last couple of years where we've been able to share the chocolates and the soaps that Dr. Bronners has provided. Also, a very special shout out to many of our monthly supporters and ambassadors who are supporting on a monthly basis the work that we're doing. If you'd like to join and you haven't yet, you can go to whyonearth.org to sign up at any level you like. If you do the $33 level, we'll send you a jar of the Waylay Water soaking salts as a thank you. And we now have a Patreon page with lots of additional goodies and benefits. So if you'd like to check that out, you can there as well, Why on Earth Community. Now, to connect with Lisa and her work and to get a copy of Soap and Soul, you can find her on Facebook at Green With Lisa Bronner. You can go to lisabronner.com. You can go to soapandsoulbook.com. And of course, you can also learn more about Dr. Bronners and their products at drbronner.com, and also on Facebook and Instagram with at Dr. Bronner as the handle. This, Lisa, is a convergence from my perspective of so many important themes and threads and topics that affect each one of us day in and day out and over the course of our lives. And I really am struck by the abundance of useful information in your book, I highly recommend that folks get a copy of Soap and Soul and actually find a cozy, comfortable spot, because it's such a fun read, and be prepared with your notepad to take some notes, because you're probably going to get some nice, simple strategies, tactics, life hacks, some folks like to call it, to make some of these choices and changes in your own life. And I was struck too, Lisa, that one of the things you speak of in such a poetic manner toward the end of the book, I think if I'm recalling correctly, is this kind of cleaning and decluttering of our lives. In addition to what we can do with cleaning products and self-care products, you were getting into more of the philosophical and less material aspect of something I think that's probably really important to many of us. And the phrasing of superfluous voices and hurry in our schedule really struck me and stuck out for me. Can you tell us a bit about those two and what your insights are around those?
Yes, absolutely. It's interesting because, as I said, I work from home. My kids are in school, so I'm home by myself a lot. And yet at the end of a day, I can feel like it's been so noisy. And how can that be? I haven't talked to anybody, just my dog and my cats. But it's because we have so many voices that are coming into our days, and sometimes uninvited, but sometimes we just jump right into the middle of them. Why, after scrolling for 20 minutes, half an hour on social, but even on a news website, why do you feel so inundated? And it's because you've had all these voices coming at you, voices that probably for the most part you don't care about, and they certainly don't care about you. They don't even know you. And every one of those voices that we hear is a decision that we have to make. Am I going to listen to it? What are they saying? Did I understand that? Do I have to change? Is there something else I should be doing? All of these, questions, and each one of those voices represents, do I let this one in? Do I push it out? If I'm going to push it out, that takes some effort. And so when we let all these voices into our lives on a regular basis, it just gets exhausting. And we experience decision fatigue, which means we make bad decisions. We lose we wear out our self-discipline muscles, and they don't work all that well, which makes it even harder to push these voices out or to do anything about them. We get susceptible to thoughts that we know are wrong or are incorrect, ideas that we're not doing it well enough, or that we should be doing something different, or that and these are, hearing these from people who don't know us and don't care. And instead, we're not listening to the voices that do know us, that do care about our well-being. It should make a lot more difference if somebody that I love and care about says to me, I think you need to make an adjustment in your life here. I think you're going in the wrong way. Rather than hearing it from some faceless voice online. And so I think we need to be a lot more vigilant about the voices that we let into our lives, especially the ones that they just kind of wander in and we don't show them the door. I think I'm on social media. I get that it's fun, but a little bit, and then I think it's good. It's like a sweet, and to send that on its way, just and make sure that the voices we do care about have first precedence in our day. That's one of the things I talk about in the bed and bathroom chapter, is make sure that the voices that you hear first in your day are the ones that are the most important to you, the ones that build you up and fill you up, before you have to go out and start encountering the voices that drain you and deplete you. So, and the same thing for the end of the day. End the day with the voices that are important to you. The people, doesn't have to be a live and in-person person. It could be something in writing. but make sure that you give them your attention and don't shut them out because you're too bogged down with this just massive voices coming in. I don't want to say social media is the only thing, because I do think that news, entertainment, is some sort of nifty phrase about that. I can't think of what it is, but I think that can also be a bit of a jumble in our experience. The news is important. I do read it, but um, yeah, just be intentional about the voices that you let into your life. Declutter them. You know, you have to do this regularly because it builds up. Close down some apps, close off some websites. Make sure you are prioritizing the good voices. And then the same thing about hurry. You know, I'm a mom. I have 3 kids, and there's a bit of a bragging scene about how busy we are. And you know, to say, you know, I went to this and this and this all yesterday, and I didn't get home until 10 o'clock, and we ate dinner in the car. Um, yeah, I remember even in high school bragging about how little sleep we got. Oh, yeah, I was up till 10 doing that English project, or, you know, I stayed up all night. I don't think we should be bragging about that. I think we should be bragging about, I got my work done in a steady way over days, and I got a good night's sleep last night, and it feels really good. I'm not good at this. I am sharing with you from the midst of my journey and my struggle. But I do think decluttering the hurry, ruthlessly eliminating the hurry. I think I didn't make that up. It's in the book, but I've heard that from someone. Ruthlessly eliminate hurry from your life. And that's, you know, the image in my head is always art. When I think about that, if you have something important in your life, but it's jammed up against something else, you're not going to be able to see it. Just like if you have a beautiful work of art, but it's side by side with all this other art and all these different styles, you're not going to be able to see it and appreciate it. You need some white space. You need some blank around it to frame it and to give you some context. And I think that's the case for our activities in our lives. We need to give them some white space to make them, you know, live their full potential, to, you know, make them a joy and not a task to do. We need to give them some blank. I'm a big fan of downtime, of zero time. I'm pretty busy, but, you know, Sundays I, you know, try to give myself permission to sit and not do anything that has to be done, just to let things simmer. You know, if you cook, you need to let things simmer. And that's the same thing in ourselves. We have to let things simmer, and you never know what's going to come out of them after that. Things that seem pointless suddenly have some purpose, and it all works out. So as I said, I'm still working on both of these. I have, you know, too many voices. I think maybe less than the norm. Still working on decluttering the hurry. It was something I have to say I learned from the pandemic. I have my calendar from March of 2020. And it was packed, like a wall calendar I had on the wall from that my kids could see all their activities. You know, everyone had a different color, and then as that month progressed and things just started getting crossed off, then finally, you know, my entire month was crossed off and the days were just empty. It was the strangest thing, you know, the stillness. It was, you know, but I learned something from it. I had not gone back to that level of busyness. I learned a lot from the benefit of stillness, because it was nice, that part of it, not all of it, but the stillness was nice. And seeing my kid. Yeah.
I so appreciate this. And you know, as a fellow author, I so appreciate how you know, bring us into these moments, these delicious, profound, unique moments in the course of the book. And I have to share, both in my novel Veritas and in our foundational tome Why on Earth, Dr. Bronners is mentioned more than once in each. I don't have counts for each, but I know the Dr. Bronners is mentioned in there frequently. And in the story of Veritas, the main character, Brigitte Sophia, goes through this journey that has her slowing way, way, way down. And something opens up. Of course, I was doing quite a bit of writing during COVID, during the pandemic. But I'm so struck by the eloquence of your writing in this book. And as we wrap up our podcast discussion, Lisa, and I'm thrilled we have the opportunity to have a shorter behind the scenes segment for our ambassadors. And folks, if you haven't joined the Ambassador Network and you'd like to, just go to whyonearth.org and get started. It's easy. I'm struck, Lisa, toward the end of the book, the way in which you bring us into this moment. It actually reminds me of a book we recently read and podcasted about with Maria Rodale, whose grandpa founded the Rodale Institute, about her shamanic experiences gardening. You invite us in to this moment late at night. I don't know if it was like 2 or 3 in the morning, where there's this stillness, this quietude, where the busyness of doing has dissipated, right? And it's as if the space itself is transformed into a place for being and comfort and sanctuary and peace. Gosh, thank you for including that in this amazing resource, because it was such a profound and delightful moment, and it really has stuck with me. Can you unpack that for us a little more? What is that happens for you so late at night?
Yes, that's something I actually first heard from in a book before I experienced it for myself. So Ray Bradbury book. I used to teach it when I was an English teacher, called Something Wicked This Way Comes. And the main character, the old man, talks about that 3 a.m. is the midnight of the soul. And in the book, it's kind of a negative thing. It's that more people die at 3 a.m. I don't know if this is true, but in the book, it says that more people die at 3 a.m. than any other time of day. And so it was the first time that I heard this idea that there's something to that middle of the night. And then my husband, Michael, talks about being awakened for the watch of the night, which is sort of a medieval concept. And I have to say that I didn't appreciate it until I had kids and was up with my children in the middle of the night. And then, later I kind of will go through one sleep cycle and not necessarily go straight into the next. And although, I do cherish my sleep a whole lot, ask my kids, there is something about that moment that's different from what's possible any other time of day. That quiet in the middle of the night. I mean, the middle of the day, it can be quiet, but somehow it's not. You just feel the energy and you feel the movement of the day around you. But the middle of the night is just, there's a beauty to it. And things are just different. And I really appreciate that. My mind is stiller, my spirit is stiller. And I don't like not being asleep necessarily, but there's a blessing to it as well. So I don't know if it would be that way for everyone, but maybe it's a bit of a perspective. If you stop being mad at your body for not being asleep and instead think, what's the potential of this moment? Is there some peace that I could be enjoying that I would miss out on if I were just asleep? I like that. I definitely did not appreciate this in my younger years. I know what neighbors keep what lights on, and I live, over 2 acres between neighbors, so houses are a little bit more distant. But I, see these friendly lights across the way, and that's always nice too. So. Yeah, so that's, it's important to think about what we're putting on our body and the physical stuff, but we can have all of that in great shape. But if we don't have the intangible stuff taken care of too, then we won't feel the peace and the freedom that we want to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I so appreciate wrapping up here your discussion about the end of day routine, also where you focus in on the tadas instead of the to-dos. And to share some tadas from our conversation, here are my notes for those who are watching the video. We've covered so much, Lisa, and thank you so much for taking the time to visit with me and share so much with our audience. And I'll summarize this in the show notes, of course. But this idea of being kinder and gentler to ourselves is something that really comes through the whole arc of the book. And the way you inspire and suggest that simple reframings, subtle adjustments can do so much for us. And I so appreciate the way you're celebrating at the end of the day the tadas, instead of being concerned about the items that are maybe still on the to-do list. As a way to wrap up, could you unpack that for us a little bit? And then, of course, if there's anything else you'd like to share with our audience, please, the floor is all yours.
Thank you, Aaron. Yeah, the Tada list was another thing that came out of my early mothering years, especially after number two. I acclimated all right to number one, but number two really threw me for a loop. I think because I was outnumbered during the days. But, I would have these intentions for my days. I'm a great list maker, make these beautiful to-do lists. And then at the end of the day, none of that would have gotten done. And it was discouraging and frustrating. And, I feel like on paper, I'm living a worthwhile life, like on the list of, raising kids and, enjoying nature and things like that. But why can't I get anything done? And so one day, in exasperation, I'm like, all right, I'm going to write down what I did today. There wasn't this list that I intended to do, but I'm going to write down, what did I do? How did I spend my time? So that when my husband comes home and says, what did you do today? I don't look like a deer in the headlights. And so it had things on it, like I took a shower. We ate breakfast and lunch. We read some books. We played outside. We looked at a flower. We played with the dog. Might have cleaned up a dog mess. Might have cleaned up the messy, kid situation. Dealt with something that was unexpected. I put all of that on the list, and then it added up to a pretty good list. And I realized, okay, well, that is what I did today. I wasn't sitting around eating bonbons and reading a romance novel. I was taking care of life, even if it wasn't the tasks that I had thought I was going to do that day. And so that really helps to redeem a day that feels like it took a left turn. And you're looking at that list from the morning and you're thinking, wow, I did none of that. It needed to get done and I didn't do it. But instead, to make a list of what you did and realize that sometimes just getting through the day is an act of great courage. And having the presence to say, I'll try again tomorrow, just takes a lot of bravery. So that's where the to-do list came from. And literally, I have notebooks of to-do lists, and they're not impressive things, but they took a lot from me that day. And so I highly encourage that for anybody who's feeling like they're in a rut, like their days never turn out the way they want, that they wonder, and that the question, what did you do today, is a terrifying question, but it will give you something to realize that you did. And little things are worthwhile. Reading the book with a child, taking the time to go for a walk or to stand and breathe in the afternoon sunset. Those are worthwhile things to do as well. To have the presence of mind to be still and not to get buffeted by external forces. That's something to put on your to-do list as well. And so, my kids they're older now, but that's something in our house. There's a couple things you can call out and everybody will come. One of them is come look at the cat. Big cat lovers. We always go see what cute thing the cat's doing. But the other is the sunset. You're making dinner, doing your homework, whatever it is you're doing, someone says, hey, go look at the sunset. That's something we're all going to pop outside for. Make sure we take in that moment because no two are alike. So in the midst of all this, I realize I enjoy talking about these aspects of the book a lot, but if people have a bottle of Dr. Bronner soap in their hand and they're wondering, what do I do with this? Why does it say 18 in one? How come there's a list that I can wash myself and my dog and my floor? That's weird. The book will tell you all of that too. It has all the uses and recipes. So I don't want to skip all of that because it's not quite as, philosophical. That's in there too.
Absolutely. Yeah, Lisa. Yeah, the book is such a great resource. Well, what a pleasure. What a joy. So much to celebrate visiting with you today. Lisa, thank you so much.
Thanks, Aaron. It's been a lot of fun to get to dive into all of these. I'm so glad you're interested in them too.
Absolutely. Thank you. Take care.
Bye-bye.
The Y on Earth Community Stewardship and Sustainability podcast series is hosted by Aaron William Perry, author, thought leader, and executive consultant. The podcast and video recordings are made possible by the generous support of people like you. To sign up as a daily, weekly, or monthly supporter, please visit yonearth.org/support. Support packages start at just $1 per month. The podcast series is also sponsored by several corporate and organization sponsors. You can get discounts on their products and services using the code YONEARTH, all one word with a Y. These sponsors are listed on the yonearth.org/support page. If you found this particular podcast episode especially insightful, informative, or inspiring, please pass it on and share it with a friend whom you think will also enjoy it. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for your support. And thank you for being a part of the Y on Earth community.